Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Linguistics for Language Learners. And today we'll introduce a new class of consonants that goes under the rather mysterious name of liquids. They're called liquids because they're somehow less solid, less clear than the other consonants we've learned so far. So here's the chart, and we've got almost all of the English consonants already introduced. And here they are. So now near the bottom of the table, we introduce a new type of consonant, and it is called the approximant. This, of course, coming from the name approximately. So the idea is that with the plosive, total closure. The fricative, almost total closure, so close that you get friction of the air when it goes through it. With approximants, you're not getting anything that's so clearly a closure. It's more vague, and that's the idea of comparing it with water, this vagueness of these consonants. And that's why they're called liquids. But although they are a little trickier to define, they're certainly not uncommon, and almost every language has some type of liquid, and a couple of them are very common. So the first one we will look at, and there's only two in English, the first one we'll look at is, well, what you see there is an upside down letter R. And this is what we think of as the letter R. You'll sometimes even see this written as a regular R. The only reason that this is written as an upside down R is because the International Phonetic Alphabet uses that normal looking R to refer to the Spanish style trilled R, and so they ran out of letters to use for the English R. So this is the sound that we call R. And what is it? R is a sound in really the majority of languages, and yet it's a strange sound because if you look at so many different languages that have an R, you can clearly know it's an R, and yet it can be totally different. So you have the Spanish R and French R, which are totally different, and yet we still think of them as R. Now this symbol here refers to the English R. So how do you make it? Well, as the chart shows, this is an alveolar or gum sound, which means that the tongue is placed near the gum behind the top front teeth. But since it's called an approximant, we don't actually touch the gum, but rather hold it behind the gum. So generally the way to make an R is to place your tongue near the gum behind the top front teeth, and you kind of bunch it back. You kind of pull it back and bunch it back. And because it's not as clear to describe, it is a bit more difficult to explain from scratch how to produce it. But it basically is this kind of bunched up tongue that's held behind the gum. Some people produce this R by curling their tongue back. That's another way to make the R. As long as your tongue is more or less in that location, you can kind of adjust the shape a little bit, and that changes the airflow, changes the sound as the air goes past it. So you can see why the term liquid again is appropriate for an R, because it's in that sort of fuzzy, vague space of, you're almost touching but not quite. But that's what an R is. As you can see in a word like read. Now, when you're learning other languages, this is certainly something to look at. What is this particular language's R? Out of any of the consonants, the R is the consonant that is more likely to be different and unpredictable in the language that you're learning. Now, the second liquid that you will find in English, and another very common sound in the world's languages, is what is called a lateral approximant, and that is the letter L. Now, what is the letter L? The word lateral, which I find easy to remember because it starts with the letter L and that's what it describes, but the word lateral means side. So this is referring to the sides of your tongue. And this is another one of those interesting facts that I really never would have imagined before I studied phonetics, because we simply learn how to produce these sounds automatically and we almost never think about how they're actually produced. But try making an L sound. L, L. May be hard to really even know what's happening, but you can see that it is in the column, the alveolar column here, the gum sound. And in this case, the tongue is actually touching the gum exactly like the letter D. So the letter L is very, very similar to the letter D in terms of you have the tip of the tongue touching the gum. The difference is, what makes it different from a D, and the reason why it's called lateral approximant, is that while the tongue, the tip of your tongue touches the gum, the sides of your tongue then curl down. So you're not making a total closure. Like when you make a D, you just press your tongue against the gum, explode it open. But with an L, because you curl down the sides of your tongue, you're leaving open space for air to flow through. So when you breathe through it, instead of the closure popping open, the air curls around the sides, and that's what creates that unique sound of the letter L. It's in a word like listen. Ooh. So you may be able to feel the sides of your tongue lowered. These are the two sounds that together are called liquids. That's it for today. Just two sounds. And next time we will introduce only two more categories of sounds left to go in the English consonants. Thanks for listening. See you next time.